What's going on, everybody? It's Blair Johnson back with another episode of the Badass Records podcast, where we talk to you about you and some of your favorite music along your life's journey. New episodes drop Thursday mornings. Find them wherever you stream on YouTube. Everything is housed neatly over at badassrecordspodcast.com. If you want to be on the show, hit me up, badassrecordspodcast@gmail.com. It's badassrecordspodcast@gmail.com. You can keep tabs on what's happening with the show on Twitter and Instagram. And I think that is all I've got for you today. Happy Juneteenth. Appreciate you stopping by. Hope you enjoy the show. Appreciate you coming over, giving me a little bit of your time.
Sure.
Markers there as a reminder for one of us to have you sign the wall when we're done.
Gotcha.
This would be episode 123, I think, of Badass Records podcast, hanging with Rich Wheeler. Appreciate you being here.
Yeah, a pleasure to be here. Man, 123 episodes.
Yeah.
That is a lot.
I mean, I don't know why. I mean, just decided that it had to be weekly.
Yeah.
And so, it took me a while to figure out what I was doing before I even started. And then it took me a few weeks to cobble one together once it was recorded, and the same for two. And since then, I haven't missed. There's been some late nights.
Yeah, I bet so. Well, I would imagine, though, that once you kind of get the hang of the editing in terms of like what you want it to be, then you can kind of format it a lot quicker, I would think.
Well, you would think that, but
is that not how it turns out?
No, so it's at bare minimum the whole conversation over again because I'm watching it,
right? That
and
makes sense.
I don't want it to just be camera on me when I'm talking. I mix it up and get some human behavior captured, and then stuff like do the claps to sync, and then you line it up and you roll, and then stuff just gets off.
Yeah,
and it's like what? And it's always the audio.
Yeah, I think
like something and
comes untethered from
the not because it's just the way. So,
I do not have the patience for that.
It's long, and some of these have gone, north of 4 hours.
Yeah,
so it's just like
huge amounts of time.
You look at the wave,
fill
pull
up
everything into the program.
You're
like,
drive.
fuck, this is I'm gonna be here for a while. But it's helpful because I catch myself asking the same question a couple times.
Right, you can edit around.
I can, but more for the purpose of learning about the conversation.
Right.
And I guess trying to learn to do better in the future. It's like,
well, it's a lot. I think, that the process of interviewing is difficult. And I've unsurprisingly, being in the business, I've had to go through that a number of times with a number of different people. And, some people are like have kind of a natural feel for it. Some people, when you first start talking to them, it feels like maybe they don't, but then you realize that they actually do have like their own sort of internal take on how they're getting at it. And it's always interesting just to kind of see how it flows from there, because it's
I think the biggest juggling act is being a part of the conversation, but also pushing the thing along.
Right.
And you gotta
be directing yourself at the same time that you're kind of And I mean, I think that's difficult for everybody. I think it's because it's also hard. Like sometimes if you're talking about heavy stuff or like things that are like conceptually difficult, trying to on the fly sort of compose your thoughts in a way that makes a certain amount of sense, can get, I mean, even if you know what I mean? Like even if you know exactly what you're trying to say, but you're trying to find like the sort of the most cogent way to like verbalize that and get it across in a way that in the moment is maybe difficult just because you're doing. I mean, I don't know if you're only doing stuff about music, but like
no, see, we're dipping into your life a little bit too.
Yeah. Well, and so I mean, you get people in those kind of situations, and it's sometimes I think it gets more difficult for people to sort of like convey what they're trying to get across, in a way. And actually, in some ways, it's not that dissimilar to like. So, I spent a lot of my career, sort of probably, I guess you would call it a professional improviser, and that you run into the same sort of like, I guess you call it, mental flow, like trying to conceptualize ideas and get them out of the horn instead of talking, right? But you run into the same sorts of things in those situations when you're improvising, because you've got the internal idea and you've got the thought, but you got to get it out the horn, and and it has to happen in real time.
Yeah,
and it's got to happen in a way that is going to be like sort of something that people who are listening can take in. And also the other musicians that you're playing with, that they can understand what you're doing at the same time. And so, I mean, that's kind of a thorny problem. If it, to say that it's complicated would be
an understatement.
An understatement.
Yeah.
But
at some point, I think Facebook, people you might know. Mm-hmm. I think mostly it picked up on the fact that I'm messaging everybody that has an instrument in front of them or a microphone,
right?
And you wound up in the mix, and so, but I didn't. In snooping around your page, I didn't see much in the way of links or places to go. So I didn't know if you had anything you wanted to plug.
There's very little on there. Well, at the moment, probably the latest thing that is out and about is a new release by the Brandon Draper Quintet, which we put out 2 weeks ago.
The Brandon Draper Quintet.
Yeah. And that is a record that it's a live record from several years ago on a 2-night stand that we did at Jardine's. And I don't know if you know Brandon at all, but he's a fantastic drummer.
Okay.
And also, he actually does a lot of different things, but he's a professor at KU.
Okay.
And, a very well-respected drummer, great player, great guy. And that band was around here kind of a push in a new direction, I think, musically around town for the jazz scene around here at the time. And Jardine's was, it's gone now.
I was going to say, it's not still around anymore, right?
It's been gone for a long time, actually.
Yeah.
But that was like when it was still up and running, that was like the hangout for everybody. That was the,
Yeah.
That's where, if you played a gig or whatever, that's where you went after, because you knew that's where all the musicians were going to be.
Right.
But that's probably the latest thing.
Out and About, Brandon Draper Quintet.
Yeah. And well, the name of the record actually is Live at Jardine's.
Oh, sorry. Okay.
I think that was
Live at Jardine's, and that is on all the streaming
stuff. That's on all the streaming platforms. And then he's got another record that I'm on that's coming out on May 3rd. That is the Draper Family Band.
Okay,
that's a project that he does with his dad, who is a Hammond B3 organ player and singer. So those are, I guess, the two things that are coming out in the near term.
Cool.
There's a lot of live playing coming up, but there always is.
But you, so you are a sax player.
Yes.
And there's baritone, tenor, and alto. Are those the three?
Those are the three main ones. I'm almost exclusively a tenor player.
Okay.
I don't play any alto or bari. I do play some soprano occasionally, but it's almost exclusively tenor.
Okay, and remind me where that one is in the pitch.
It'd be like in the middle.
Okay,
yeah. I mean, it's the names of the horns kind of go in the same way that vocal ranges go. So that tenor sort of covers the territory that would be sort of like cello-ish, I guess.
Interesting.
In terms of pitch range.
Okay. So you gig with a bunch of different outfits, and if you are asked to do a gig or you got a gig coming up, whoever's outfit it is promoting that stuff. You don't.
I'm mostly a sideman these days. I don't run too many projects.
Okay.
And I try and keep stuff up. Like, I post about things.
Okay.
When they're coming up, there's always a post. But I I don't have a whole lot of information on there. Facebook's weird.
Yeah, man.
Like, I have a bunch of family members that I'm friends with on there too, and like, I don't really want to put a whole lot of information on there.
Okay.
I mean,
you're taking me taking me right down the path I want to go for a couple of reasons. One, and just if part two of this is not kosher, I'll just say so. I'll cut it. Number one, we had already started talking, and I believe had agreed on today.
Right.
And either Steve or Dan posted about a gig, like it was the day after. And I tried to find it, and I couldn't find it, but it was like great time gigging at such and such venue last night. We were with this person and that person, and then Rich Wheeler showed up, and things got weird. And it was totally meant like in a nice.
I think we played a gig at I think it was Mini Bar. This would have been that would have been like 2 months ago, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, I think it was that night, and things definitely got weird. I mean, in a good way, but
right.
Okay, so like a lot of times with those kind of things, with those guys, if I show up, I don't know any of the tunes, and I haven't even heard them generally, and so it's just like
here we are back.
Here we are. Get up and go. Right.
Idea, get it out of the horn.
Yeah, and so like it's always it's fun for me, but it is like I mean sometimes it can get interesting because like I'm not even remotely kidding when I say like I don't know the tunes. They're like when I played with them, there are 3 of them that I know because I recorded them, so I do know those.
Fair,
but like then the rest of the set, like 9 times out of 10, I haven't even heard the tune before until right then.
But you have chops.
Yeah, I mean, I've done a lot of that kind of thing.
Range.
Right. Well, generally I'll ask Dan, if it's with Dan, for instance, I'll just ask him what key we're in and then kind of go from there.
Okay.
And then, at that point you're trying to do something interesting, but you're also trying to make sure you're not going to like get in the way.
Step on toes.
Right.
Yeah.
So, there's that may be like sort of, from an improvising standpoint, it's interesting. This is kind of an interesting topic to get into, but it probably like puts some guardrails up on what you might try. You know what I mean? Because you are trying to like make sure that you're not going to do something that's going to blow the band up, right? Whereas in other situations, where if it's tunes or playing with bands where everyone's expecting a lot of heavy improvising, there might not be any guardrails. It might just be like
totally different animal.
Yeah, and so situationally that changes in terms of your thought process.
Lisa Simpson going down the hallway.
It's I mean, it's true. It's like if it's like a quartet, like a jazz quartet situation, like as far as I'm concerned, no guardrails, none. Like
because everybody's gonna do right?
Everybody's on board. Everybody knows what's coming, and it's like we're gonna work together to see what we can pull off, right? In a more of like a sort of a for lack of a better word, and I hate this term, but like a pop band situation, Dan would probably cringe if he heard me say that. But sorry, Dan, that's not what I mean. I just can't think of a better term for it. In those situations, like you very well could blow the band up if you're not careful. Because they're playing a tune, right? Like they know
3 minutes and 45 seconds, and 3 verses,
right?
Of course.
And they have a very clear expectation of what they expect to happen and exactly how they want it to go, and they've rehearsed it, and all those things. And so you do want to make sure that whatever you're doing is not going to be something that's going to throw a hand grenade in the middle of their tune. Sometimes it happens whether you meant for it to or not, and then it becomes the game of just like, how do I get myself out of this, right? Which, I mean, that's fun for me. Sometimes it's probably not fun for someone who's not expecting it, but that part of it is, you'll hear a lot of jazz improvisers say that the funnest stuff happens when you can tell that someone's backed themselves into a corner, because then you get to hear how they're going to get out of it. And guys that do that for a living are unbelievably good at sort of like unwinding themselves if they've completely stepped in it, and that's usually where the real sort of like the real
magic
cool
happen,
real cool moments happen. And in music that sort of gets to your sort of tolerance for taking risk with music, right? And especially at this point in my career, like I don't have any risk aversion. There's not any. I'll try whatever.
For sure.
and people are either okay with that or they're not. If they're not, they're probably not going to call me. But but it is that's sort of like an experience thing. Like I've been doing that kind of music for 30 years.
Cool.
Professionally.
Cool.
So it's like you kind of get to a point where from an experience factor, you kind of know that it's not going to get too sideways. Like no matter what happens, we can fix it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Well, so the other part of that is I don't normally do that. I don't know why. Probably because there was not a bunch of info to. So I took a peek in your friends list.
Yeah.
And a bunch of crab trees.
Yeah.
And this, may or may not be the right person, but I one time for a chunk of middle school took guitar lessons from a Larry Crabtree.
I have an uncle, Larry Crabtree, but it's not that guy.
Well, so I bought like a Stratocaster imitation electric guitar from the Tune Shop in the Village, which is now Village
I used
Music.
to teach there.
Okay, okay. And I don't know if it was one of these deals where I tore a piece of his flyer off and called him, or if he started there and then moved to the home. But anyway, my mom would drive me to his place in like kind of Merriam-ish. And he used to gig all the time with Kiki's Bonton Soul Accordion Band, and taught lessons to a bunch of folks.
You're talking about Jimmy Dykes? Is it
Jimmy Dykes? That's okay. I'm crossing stories.
Yeah.
My buddy was taking lessons at the same time through Jimmy Dykes at Tune Shop.
Right.
Larry Crabtree, I think maybe knew Jimmy, and maybe they gigged.
They would have known each other for sure. Jimmy, I knew Jimmy pretty well. When I first started my career, I used to play with him.
Okay.
Like in the 90s.
In
one of the versions of Blue Rhythm when they put that back together.
Yeah.
So this would have been like 94, 95.
Okay.
I was like 18. And Jimmy, I loved him, man. He's a great dude. A fantastic musician.
Yeah.
And he taught, man, that guy taught at the Tune Shop where you're talking about like 75 half-hour lessons a week. It was insane.
Wow.
He would get there at like noon on Monday and go to like 9 o'clock, just back to back to back to back to back.
Yeah, well, how many...
And he would do it every day.
How many lessons can you fit in before school gets out?
Right. Well, I mean, yeah, you think about it. I mean, it's like... So, I mean, he was teaching adults and kids and like everything under the sun, and the Larry Crabtree that you're talking about, I've met him.
You have?
I have. It's been a long, long time ago, but after you were talking about it, I'm pretty sure I have anyway. I think that's who that was. No relation to the Crabtrees that are on my
point being, I've wondered about 4 million times, like, I wonder where that guy is.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know. And then boom, there, I was like, holy shit, could that be? And then I looked at, I was like, I don't think that's
it. Different guys. Those Crabtrees are all in Arkansas.
Oh, okay. Okay. Gotcha.
But it is funny though, how you can, like, one thing about this business is like because it's a networking business, like the connections that you end up finding. Like you may meet somebody that you've never met in your life, and within 5 minutes realize that there may be like 10 people that you know in common. Through completely different circumstances, or whatever, which is always an interesting, like, you're like, how the hell did that? Okay. I mean, like,
service industry in this town is the same way. Yeah. I mean, just like
very much so.
Oh. Okay.
Right.
We got some stories to swap.
Well, you get a lot of crossover in that. Do you work in the service industry?
I did about 20 years. So I'm not doing it now, but
yeah. Well, and like, I mean, there's obviously like a ton of crossover between service industry and music industry. And sometimes you get people who are doing both, right? Like that, we were talking about that one project earlier Steve Tulipana.
Yeah.
You know, he owns Record Bar and Mini Bar. And then
Gherkin's been
Yeah,
here.
I was going to say Gherkin's the drummer in that. So Gherkin works at Regaza. And like,
a long time ago, many moons ago.
Yeah. And so, yeah, you know, there's tons of like crossover there.
So you're born and raised here then?
No.
Oh.
No, I'm from Arkansas.
Okay.
I've been here since so I lived here for a little while in the late 80s, early 90s, and then left and went to college. And then after college, I came back here in like 2000.
Okay.
Probably.
That's when I came back too from college.
And I've been here since 2000.
Okay.
So whatever that is. Oh God, 24 years.
I know, quarter century.
Yeesh.
You have siblings?
I have a sister.
Okay. Mm-hmm. And any idea how mom and dad met?
Oh, no, you know, I'm not really comfortable talking about that.
Okay, that's fair. That's fair.
That's their thing. I'm gonna leave that.
Sure.
But yeah, they're all still around. They all live in New Mexico these days.
Cool.
My sister and her family, my mom and dad. My sister lives in Los Alamos, and then my mom and dad live in Santa Fe.
Okay. Beautiful town.
Yeah, it's really nice, man. It's nice to have a place to go in the summer and visit that's not like, you know, the blazing pits of hell like it is around here.
Yeah, I know it.
And so, it's they've been out there for about 20 years.
Okay.
I guess they must have moved there. Now that I think about it, they must have moved there about the time I moved here, a little after I moved here, I guess, a couple of years after I moved here.
Okay.
And I basically came back here because I had a lot of connections here.
Sure.
From school and everything else.
Sure.
And like, I was looking to get into, you know, getting started with a real, you know, freelancing professional career. And this town has a lot of advantages in terms of that. Not the least of which is cost of living here compared to other major cities isn't bad. And if you're going to be a freelancer, that's something you got to take into account immediately. For sure. Because you know, New York's cool. I love it, but I don't know how the hell people like
pay one rent.
It's like 5 people living in a closet, I guess. I mean, you know, I couldn't do it. So I spent a lot of time up there, but you know, vaguely considered moving when I was younger, but I just, every time I looked at it, I was like, financially, this is a dumb idea.
Right.
Like, there's no way to make this work, you know? So just contented with going up there some to play and hang out here and there. And, it ended up, you know, being here. And I've been a freelancer around here ever since I came back.
Cool.
So.
Was there music played in the home? Were you guys listening to tunes?
My folks are both, they like music.
Okay.
You know, neither one of them are musicians.
Right.
My mom plays piano a little bit.
Okay.
You know, grew up playing piano a little bit. And they both like music. But you know, there's no musicians in the family.
Sure. Any memories of what they would listen to when you were growing up?
Man, all kinds of stuff.
Okay.
I remember a lot of things like Otis Redding.
Cool.
And Willie Nelson.
Nice.
And you know, I mean, all that sort of makes sense when you consider the fact, like, I was born in 1974, so those early
74 babies.
Yeah, you know, so like those early memories, they were like, you know, late 70s, I guess, which, you know, that kind of thing was, you know.
Bee Gees.
Yeah,
I mean,
you know. And it was a lot of Johnny Cash.
Cool.
A lot of that kind of vibe of stuff. And then my grandmother was a big blues fan on my dad's side.
Okay.
And she lived in Memphis, and so we would go over there to visit and go hear stuff, you know.
Stuck inside of Mobile with the Memphis Blues again. Nice.
Yeah, I spent a lot of time in Memphis as a kid because she lived over there, so we would go over and visit. And
cool.
Probably 2 or 3, 4 times a year.
Nice.
And where I grew up is kind of north central Arkansas.
Okay.
In the middle of nowhere, not close to anything. It's a tiny town in the mountains, and my mom's side of the family's all from there, and I grew up there, and we moved, I guess, I was probably a teenager. I was probably 12 or 13, I think, when we moved up here. And my folks lived around here for just basically while I was kind of in high school, and maybe a year before I was in high school, and then left the area. But at that point, I already had a lot of connections here, and I'd gotten money to go to KU, so...
Cool.
went to college, and then like I say, when I got out of college, I moved to Louisiana for a while, and then came back here.
Nice. So. I'm interested in this idea of the music that our folks or whoever's raising us has or listens to, and then one day you sort of take that first step into forging your own tastes. I'm curious, outside of the list that you shared with me, if there's an album that you first fell in love with, or maybe bought with your own money, or borrowed, or anything like that.
Man, one of the very first ones, which I probably should have put on that list. I don't know if, now that I say that, maybe I did put it on the list, but I don't think I did. It was a Dexter Gordon album called Our Man in Paris. That was one of the very first like jazz saxophone records I ever heard.
Okay,
and I wore that thing out. That was probably one of the very first records I ever had where I listened to every track like
it was you're studying for a
test.
And
just would like listen to it, start it over, listen to it again, start it over.
And how did it wind up in your hands?
I started taking saxophone lessons from a guy here in town who is also a professional saxophonist still here, by the name of Doug Talley, and he suggested that record. It was like, you should check that out, and I did, and became a huge Dexter Gordon fan for one thing, but that record, and I still listen to that record.
Cool.
Not probably 4 or 5 times a year. I'll be like, oh man, I can throw that on.
Yeah.
Like check it out. But no, that came at the suggestion of Doug Talley.
Okay. Cool.
And Doug is still an active professional tenor player here in town. Plays with Kansas City Jazz Orchestra.
Nice.
He's been a school teacher at Shawnee Mission Northwest for 30 years. But he's retiring at the end of this year. And
we were there for a basketball game last Sunday.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have a bunch of students from there. I private teach saxophone. Okay. It's a good school. They have great faculty, that's for sure.
Yeah.
The music faculty is excellent.
Cool.
And Doug is kind of a legend in music education around here. But yeah, I mean, that's kind of where that came from. Actually, I got a bunch of good record recommendations from him.
Nice. Now, how about shows? Is there any early or a first concert that stands out for you, whether it was with family or with a buddy? Or
man, I never think about that. I don't know why, but like shows, I think some of this comes from playing so many shows. It's hard for me to remember.
Oh yeah, they all kind of blend together.
Well, and also just like separating them, and then remembering shows and be like, was I on that or did I go to that? One of the first ones that I remember going to see that I really thought was great, for a number of different reasons. I was in college actually, and went to the Bottleneck to see the Urge.
Okay.
From St. Louis, and after the very first time I saw them, I went like every time they came to town.
I love Bottlenecks.
Great
venue.
That band was so good live. Like they were ridiculous.
Yeah.
So in college, I started going to shows like that. But I also went to a lot of stuff at the Outhouse. I remember going to see Body Count at the Outhouse.
Whoa.
that was wild.
I saw him at Arrowhead with.
This would have been way before that.
Yeah.
They were like, they did this. I don't know. I still can't believe they played there, because I don't know if you ever went to the Outhouse. But
I still have never.
It's like the size of this room.
Yeah.
And then a bunch of jazz shows when I got a little older and started going to stuff. Seeing like Joe Henderson, John Schofield, and Michael Brecker, and. Medeski. Saw them at the Bottleneck.
Okay.
Actually.
Well, they've put...
that would have been in the, probably mid to late 90s. And they were great,
they had 2 records with John Schofield.
Yep.
And then more or less after that, I had to check out.
Yeah.
Like, they just went to... And then actually, my youngest of 3 sisters wound up at Mizzou for a couple years. and I'm back here now, so it's 2000, 2001. I shot down to see them at the Blue Note.
Yeah.
And I was like, what the fuck are you guys doing? Like, I get, like, you guys are
different,
here
in
the mental, professional student world of music, and we're all way down here, and we don't understand, you know.
Leave it in the dust.
I'll just, eventually I'll start enjoying it.
I mean, that is something to consider on that, So one thing that's different in a band like that, okay, where they're basing things around that idea of improvisation and that kind of thing incorporated in the tunes, the evolution that happens in a group like that is very different than the evolution that happens like in a pop situation where there is a specific sound and thing that you're trying to push, right?
Fascinating point.
And it's like the evolution that happens. I mean, you may end up in 5 years with an improvising band like that where it bears no resemblance whatsoever to what it was, right?
I mean, it's almost like if you are at like a K through 6 and the preschool, you hear the little pieces of playground you get to play on,
right?
But these are over here. Those are for the bigger kids, and you'll get hurt if you. And now, fast forward 6 years later, you're a sixth grader. And if you went to play on the thing you played on when it wouldn't work. It wouldn't be fun.
Right.
You would probably break it.
Yeah, it is though. I mean, it's a very different. The expectation is very different, right? You're going into those like a band like Medeski. I mean, you're going into a band like that with the assumption that over time it's going to evolve to a point where it may not be recognizable to what like the first record was or something like that. And in fact, if you're doing it right, that should be the goal.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Whereas if you're like, I don't know, you pick a band from that same time period, like Soundgarden or something, let's say. Okay. Well, they've got a very different set of priorities for the evolution of that band where there's a certain style and image that's going to have to stay somewhat similar as things push forward. Or commercially, they're going to have problems.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And so I think that it really is like the genre drives a lot of sort of like what is acceptable in terms of that.
For sure.
Which is, I think, that's where things, I think, get tricky with like turning people on to becoming like a fan of jazz, for instance. Like, what people don't, if you go to let's say, I don't know, you go see Taylor Swift at T-Mobile, okay?
You're buying tickets, right?
Oh yeah, sure. Gonna sell my car. But you've got a very clear expectation of what you're going to see and hear, right? Whereas if you go see, let's say, Donnie McCaslin, there is no expectation of what you're going to see and hear because there's literally no telling.
They're not even sure.
They're not even sure, and it's going to be whatever they feel like doing at the time. And so I think it's going to be great if you're into that kind of thing. But I think that's hard for people sometimes to have the leap of faith of like, I don't know what this is going to be, but I'm going to go anyway, right? Whereas, you go see, a big touring act, you pretty much know, right, what it's going to be.
Yeah.
And I will throw out my own personal view on that, and this totally comes from just being involved in music the way that I have for the last 25 years. I have zero interest in going to see one of those shows.
Same set list every night?
Absolutely none.
Don't even remember what city you're in?
I have no interest in that whatsoever.
Yeah.
To me, that's a show. I might as well be going to see Cats.
Yeah.
For me, there's no difference.
Yeah.
And I don't want to go see a show where people are just going to play the tunes they played on their record exactly the way they played them on the record.
Right.
I could care less.
Right.
If I wanted to hear the record, I would listen to the record.
Yeah. Save myself a few bucks.
Yeah. I mean, and that's not to poo-poo, like, if people like doing those things, I get it.
Support live music in whatever way works for you.
Yeah. I'm totally on board with that idea too. I'm merely pointing out that I think largely because of how I've been involved.
Yeah.
and I think it's probably true for a lot of musicians. It's like what would be interesting to me is definitely not what would be interesting to somebody else.
Yeah.
Most likely, I don't want to hear somebody do something the same way every time.
Yeah.
Ever.
Yeah.
And I don't even care what genre you're talking about.
Yeah.
Really, for me.
Yeah.
And I want to go see live stuff because I want to. I mean, it's more interesting live. But for me, like the idea of going to like, T-Mobile or Arrowhead or something to see a show, that doesn't hold any appeal for me.
Right.
I want to see stuff in, my maximum size venue that I really like to go to would be like Record Bar.
Okay.
And
I still have yet to go.
Oh, really?
To anything there compared to the main room at the Ship. Are we talking same?
I think Record Bar holds about 400, 350, 400.
So a little bit bigger.
Yeah, a little bit bigger.
Okay.
But not. I guess I don't know. I don't know exactly what the numbers are on that, but yeah, a little bit bigger.
I trust that it's a great space to be.
Oh yeah, it's a wonderful
place
to play. Yeah,
feel wise.
The stage is great. The sound's great. I mean, it makes sense. I mean, the guys that run it were toured in a band for years.
Yeah,
they know what needs to be there.
Yeah,
right. They know what it needs to be like.
Yeah,
and they do a great job with that.
Cool.
And it's a great place to play. It's fun. And they really they have interesting stuff. Like,
for sure.
Like really interesting stuff. And part of that's because of the industry connections that Steve and Sean have, because they were in that world forever, right? And so they know everybody. And so there's all of these touring bands that'll come through that probably wouldn't normally play a club like that will.
I mean,
because they know them.
90 plus % of the posts that I see about show X coming up, and I look and say, never heard of them.
Yeah.
Almost all the artists. I'm like, who are these?
Yeah.
This endless well of bands that.
Well, and if you go start listening to them, you're like, oh, okay, that's really good.
Nice.
I mean, that's part of the interest with that.
Yeah.
They had, I don't know if you're familiar with Sleepy Time Gorilla Museum.
I've seen the name for sure.
Yeah, they had them a while back, and that was one of the best shows I've seen in ages. And it was, it was packed. It was great.
Cool.
And they do, they do a pretty broad spectrum of stuff down there.
Yeah.
They don't get hung up on doing one thing. They're hung up kind of on, is it good? And if it's good, then we're going to put it on.
What a perspective from a business standpoint.
Yeah,
let's only book stuff that's good.
Let's book stuff that's good. I mean, they're obviously looking at it. Is it going to sell as well?
Of course.
But they're also very good about finding really interesting stuff to put in.
Yeah.
And that's always fun for me too, because it's so you had Gherkin.
Yes.
Right. Okay. So
he kept saying, I'm just the guy back there that hits stuff.
Yeah, that sounds right.
When he tries to throw in ideas, then they're like, just shut up and hit stuff.
He's the drummer in that Men of Men project.
Yeah.
That's Steve Tulipana, and it's me and Steve and Jason and Jeff Harshbarger and Kyle Dahlquist and Alex Alexander. And one of the best things about that is that the way that band works, for every gig, Steve puts together sort of a deep cut playlist of all kinds of different stuff that he likes. And then we learn it and play it.
Cool.
And it's great because it's always stuff I've never heard. And it's always good.
Wow.
Because Steve's got excellent music taste. And so, but the funnest part of it is there'll be some tune on that playlist you listen to and you're like, God damn, that's good. And then you look at who it is and you're like, and I have never heard of that person in my life. And that's one of the funnest things about that band is just that. You get to hear all this stuff that I never would have come across in a million years otherwise. He'll find those things and be like, oh, we're doing that.
Nice.
Put it on.
So getting together, I mean, you got to get together and learn the stuff in some fashion. Are you guys doing, 2 get-togethers per outing, or
usually
okay,
1 or 2. Kind of depends. Everybody's pretty busy.
Yeah.
We do definitely have to get together because, I mean, not this. We got one coming up on the 27th, and we're doing some stuff that we've done before on that for some scheduling reasons. But
sure,
like the one before that, we learned 30 tunes. 26. Sorry, I think it was 26. And that's not unusual. We did. Kyle keeps a list that has all of the tunes we've ever done.
Awesome.
And I think last time he mentioned it, that list had like 500 some odd tunes on it that we've done. And so the workload is pretty high. Like
always horn. There's always a horn piece.
Almost never. I'm usually just inventing something out of whatever's on there for
awesome.
All of them.
Or sounds awesome. I should say.
It is. It's a little nerve wracking just trying to figure out like, okay, what's going to work here? Like, what am I going to do that's going to add something to this?
Yeah.
And also like listening to be like, okay, because occasionally this will happen where there's a tune where I'm like, the right call here is for me to not do anything.
I was just wondering if that happens.
It does happen, and sometimes it's the right thing to do. Is to to be objective about it and listen to it and be like, okay, realistically, the best thing to do here is to not do anything. And you have to be willing to do that because none of the stuff that we're doing has horns on it. I mean, it's all. There's a bunch of punk stuff and a bunch of occasionally I think the show that we're doing this coming time, I think there's 5 tunes that actually had a horn on them.
Interesting. And you're not, if that's the case for tune X that has a horn, you're not coming in and doing it exactly as right.
Not usually.
Yeah.
I may do if there's like a quote unquote horn line, then I probably will do that.
Sure.
But generally, no. I mean, there are situations where I do, up to a point anyway, do exactly what was there. That probably the biggest example of that would be, I don't know if you're familiar, but in January every year, we do this Bowie tribute thing that Michelle Bacon
Band
puts
That Fell to Earth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so for that, except for the actual solo bits, I do play pretty much as exactly as I can.
So you've been
what was on the record,
part of that thing
from the beginning. Yeah,
nice.
And but in that situation, I do with the exception of the solo bits, I do play exactly what's on the record. Like,
what year was this for that? Like how many?
I think this year was 9.
Okay.
The first time we did it was complete happenstance and kind of unfortunate happenstance, but that show was already booked and the rehearsals had started, and then he died like a week before the shows.
Oh, damn.
So it was like whatever year, it must have been 2016 that he died, probably something along those lines. But it was like a week later is when those shows were booked.
Whoa. That had to be heavy.
It was weird. We had to change venues because after he died, the sales went so nuts for tickets that it wouldn't fit where we were originally going to do it anymore.
A good problem.
Yeah, I mean, we ended up having to move it to the Uptown because it was like, ticket demand went berserk.
It's so weird how we do that as people.
Yeah.
When somebody's gone, it's like, I gotta
consume. Now I gotta. Yeah, it's like. There's nothing more American than that.
Yeah.
But then since then we've done it every year at the Record Bar.
Okay.
And usually we do. The last few years we've done 3 nights in a row.
And all 3 nights have different sets. Is that true? Right.
Pretty much.
Cool.
And that thing is a haul. Like Saturday this year, I think we did 31 tunes. Yeah, dude. It's like, I'm glad I'm not a singer in that band because like
you need to rest your pipes for 2 weeks.
Man, those guys, it's and
you got a lot of words to remember too.
Yeah. Well, and Bowie, those tunes are weird. they're not like, a lot of times with normal like sort of pop format tunes, the forms are very straightforward a lot of times. And his are absolutely not.
Right.
Like definitely not.
Right.
Like you have to learn those tunes. Like they are not friendly in that regard. And that makes them interesting.
Yeah.
Makes them good.
Yeah.
But it's like when we first started doing that, I spent hours making sure that I had the horn stuff correct on a lot of those, because people know those tunes.
Yeah,
like,
man.
And I mean, I'm not usually sort of like way into the cover thing, but in that particular instance, it feels like if we're gonna do it, then it needs to be like,
dude, yeah.
And it's like those saxophone parts, depending on which era and what tunes you're talking about. I mean, some of it's Lenny Pickett from Saturday Night Live. Some of it is David Sanborn. Like Young Americans is David Sanborn. And then some of it is like the early stuff, particularly some of it's Bowie.
Playing sax?
Yes.
What?
Yeah. He was a saxophone player.
And piano and guitar?
Yeah. And so like there's a weird spread of like players and a weird spread of stuff,
It's not him on Space Oddity, is it?
On saxophone, yeah.
Is it really?
Wow. And what are some other examples there? TVC 1.5, that's him.
Huh.
That Barry solo that's going on at the end, that's him. Yeah, he did in the early years. He did quite a bit of. You're familiar with the tone. Probably the biggest solo examples. Soul Love. That tune.
I don't think so.
I wasn't familiar with it until we played it, but there's like a big alto solo on that, and it's him. And yeah, he did a lot of that, and then later on started hiring, like some of the better players that were on that scene, like Sanborn and like Blue Jean. That's Lenny Pickett on that. And then the last record, which is one of the ones that I sent you, the Blackstar record. So that saxophonist Donnie McCaslin is probably like one of the greatest living saxophone players on the face of the earth. Like for real.
I'm sure.
Like he is in particularly jazz circles, like that dude is ultra famous.
Wow.
Like big time.
Wow.
And that whole band that's his band, that Bowie used for that record. And it's interesting because it's an interesting melding of like some real modern improvising things, with that sort of David Bowie pop tune sensibility thing, and that record's killer. I don't have a clue what people in general think of it, but like the concept of it's amazing.
Well, I haven't even come close to completing. Like I'm still processing.
There's a lot.
And we'll get to it. But Mark Manning did from Wednesday Midday Medley did an episode with me and was
love Mark.
He saw the Medeski thing and he said, I was watching a television show lately. And every time a piece of music would play in the show, I would just have this cringe feeling. So I felt compelled to figure out who was doing the music, and it was John Medeski. That's track. Yeah.
Well, it's funny how like sometimes that there can be things like that where like I kind of get that way with who's the guy from Radiohead that did a few movie soundtracks?
I only know Tom York's
It may have been Tom York that did it. I can't. But he did he did the soundtrack for There Will Be Blood.
Oh man, that shit was wicked heavy.
Yeah, and it's like and real uncomfortable, but intentionally. I mean, the movie's uncomfortable as fuck. So it's like
dude.
So that like that all of the stuff that was. I'm pretty sure I have that right. That he was the one that did that. But
and I am the biggest Daniel Day-Lewis fan.
Yeah.
But like it took me.
Dude, that movie was tough.
It took me years to be okay with his Gangs of New York character.
Oh yeah.
And then we move into that, and I was like, God, what are we doing
Dude,
here?
it's so that scene at the end where he's talking about I take my straw and I drink your milkshake that is so uncomfortable for like 5 minutes straight where you're just like, oh my god, okay. But it's interesting, like, how some of those guys will kind of cross over into doing, other things like that. And sometimes it works.
Yeah.
And sometimes it
Yeah.
doesn't,
Yeah.
But they, I good on them for trying.
Yeah.
I mean, I get it.
So tenor sax, is that where your trajectory as a musician begins? Or did you start with piano and move your whole...
It was all that. Like, and not only that, unusually in the saxophone community, I started on tenor.
Wow.
I did not start on alto.
Okay.
And so I've been a tenor player from the very beginning. Like,
now, are horn players akin to guitar players in that at some point, like the number of guitars that they have had or currently have is just, you're like, what?
They're not, and I'll tell you why. Because saxophones are hideously expensive. Like, I mean, like buying cars, hideously expensive.
Come on.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, like thousands of dollars.
Sure.
So, so no, unless you have a real good job, it is not a collector's market.
Well, I'm glad that you said that, because I think that maybe one of our mutuals is Scott Reed.
Yeah.
I was married into that family for a decade, and I just saw him on Easter.
Yep.
And he has been working on horns.
Oh, yeah.
And
yeah, he's a repair guy, but he also flips horns. He buys and sells a lot.
Yes.
But yeah, they're crazy expensive. You've probably seen
well, I
some of
see.
them. Yeah,
I'm like, what?
Yeah. Well, and he's keeping part of that too. Like some of the ones that he's buying and selling are vintage horns, which there tends to be a little price wise a bit more of a premium on.
Sure.
But like a tenor, for instance, if you wanted to just go buy a new one, and you wanted to get something that's a professional quality instrument, you're going to spend at least $6,000.
Come on.
Yeah.
Wow.
You can buy stuff that's cheaper than that. But if you're gonna play professionally and you're gonna use it as a professional instrument, you're gonna spend at least $6,000. If you're looking at a vintage tenor, like a Selmer Mark VI or Selmer Balanced Action, 10 is not out of the question. 12 is not out of the question.
Those are car prices.
Yes. So, yeah, I mean, it's its own limiting factor is the point.
Sure.
They're so expensive that,
okay.
To give you an idea, I don't even have a backup tenor. I have one.
You let other people hold it?
Hell no. Absolutely not.
Get your fucking hands off it.
Nobody plays it but me, and nobody touches it, period. And the one I'm playing on is it's a Selmer Balanced Action from 1938.
38?
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
And silver plated. It's conservatively worth $12,000.
Golly.
That's what I've got it insured for.
Oh, insurance.
Absolutely.
Wow.
If you're here's a PSA for all the listeners out there. If you're a professional musician and you don't have specific instrument and equipment insurance through an industry provider that deals with that stuff, you've lost your mind.
Because people could steal your shit.
You're taking your shit
fire
into clubs where it could get knocked over, kicked off stage, stolen, whatever.
Spilled on.
You're transporting it to and from things constantly.
I have never heard this before.
Oh, this is important. This is a big one. And on top of that, if you're in my position, I'm a 100% full timer. Okay, so if that horn is gone, I'm out of business. Like, period. Okay,
that's fucking terrifying.
So there are specialty insurers out there. I use Clarion that will insure your stuff with a very low deductible, and they'll insure it not only for loss but also for damage. So if it gets, like, if I'm on a gig like last night, let's say, and somebody kicks it off a horn stand and it gets damaged, I can make a claim and get the repair work done on an insurance claim, which the reason I point that out is because if something like that were to happen, the repair bill could easily be north of $1,000.
I'm sure.
Like, no question.
You don't just have that under your pillowcase necessarily.
Right. And so, like, if you're a working musician, you absolutely should have all your gear insured. It's not that expensive. It's not nothing, but It's not that expensive. And it is a hedge against the worst possible situation you could have. Because if I didn't have it insured and something had happened to that horn, there is no way in hell I could replace it. I mean, they're too expensive.
Yeah.
I mean, and I know a lot of guys don't want to do it because they don't want to spend the money on it. But I mean, especially like how many times have you read in the last year? You get on Facebook and somebody had their trailer stolen with all the band's gear in it or whatever, and it's like, look. You gotta insure that stuff. You have to, man, because otherwise you're shit out of luck. It's gone. You ain't getting it back. Like, that's a pipe dream.
Yeah. How many times do you see that Facebook post?
I have seen that once.
Okay.
One time.
That's one more time than I've seen it.
The only person I know that got any of their stuff back ever that I've ever known was Mike Stover. One time got some stuff that he got stolen. He found it on a like a music store website in Wichita, and found some of his gear and got some of it back. He is literally the only person I've ever known that got anything back in that situation. So yeah, I mean, insure your shit.
Yeah,
like you wouldn't live in your house without homeowners insurance.
Right.
I mean, why? Because it's too expensive to replace if something happens, right?
Well,
it's the same thing.
I've been trying to talk Scott into coming and doing one of these, and he's supposedly still working on his list. But in the meantime, he's created a YouTube channel where I think is kind of...
Is he doing repair stuff on it? Probably. I haven't seen it.
Me either. He told me about it on the phone, and I think it's like immediately took off in terms of viewership and subscribers and all those things you look for.
Yeah, I mean, depending on, particularly if he is doing repair stuff on it, I bet it did. And part of the reason that I bet it did is I'm not aware of anybody else doing like a woodwind repair style like YouTube channel that I'm aware of.
Right.
That's kind of an archaic, like, thing. People. I'm afraid that may become a lost art. Woodwinds are ungodly complicated machines.
I mean, just looking at one, it feels that way.
And there are so many things that go into like making them play correctly and maintaining them correctly. And, most of the repair people that I know that are super good are pretty old. And, it's like there's not that many people.
Where's your apprentice, man?
Yeah, exactly. It's like you got to have. Well, some of them do take apprentices.
They teach somebody to do the thing when you're gone.
We're lucky around here. There's 3 or 4 people that are pretty good.
Okay.
That's helpful because, like, if a horn breaks, I mean, like, getting something done as quickly as possible is important.
Yeah.
Because again, you're out of business.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of things on a saxophone that can break. There's a shitload of springs on it, any one of which can break. There's a shitload of pads on it, any one of which can tear. There's corks, key corks, neck corks, all that crap.
Yeah.
Like, if anything happens to any of it, you got to do something about it. And then there's also just the metal work side of it, I mean, everybody's careful, but dings and dents are a fact of life. And if it's, if it's something that's bad enough that it needs to be repaired, you got to get it done.
Yeah.
And that's an expense that, if you're serious about it, you just, bite the bullet and get it done.
Yeah.
Because like it's gonna,
Yeah.
Scott does a lot of work like that, and does a lot of the work too, where he's sort of setting up horns to sell, like he's finding, good deals on stuff and then setting them up so they can sell them.
Yeah.
And seems to have done pretty well with that.
Yeah, I think so.
His son's a good saxophone player too.
Oh, I didn't realize he played.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Oh yeah.
Cool.
Dylan.
Yeah, he's gotten tall.
Yeah. Woo. Yeah, he was, if I remember correctly, he was an all-state band member last year.
Okay, maybe that feels familiar.
So yeah, I mean, he can really play too.
Nice. I'm curious, did you ever cross paths with a cat named Adam Wilkie? jazz guitarist. He was in St. Louis for a long time, but
that name sounds really familiar.
Well, he came by and did one a long time ago. Older brother of a buddy of mine.
Yeah.
And just a really, really cool cat and very educated in the world of jazz, and he gave me a huge list.
Oh man, yeah.
And then we wrapped.
Jazz guys to pick like 3 albums. They're like, oh crap, I can't do that.
His list was like 15.
Yeah.
And when we got north of 4 hours and wrapped, he was like, "That went long, man." I was like,
I don't know. He was like, "Man, you gave me like the discography of 3 people."
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know that many people from St. Louis. It's weird.
Well, he grew up here.
Did he?
But then eventually was in St. Louis for a number of years, and I think gigging took him there.
Yeah.
And then it was working for a little while, and now that he's not there, I think he's pleased.
Yeah.
But I'm not sure how much, he's circulating. Anyway.
It's hard to know, man. It's interestingly, there are multiple musicians here from St. Louis, but I don't. There's not a whole lot. Weirdly, there's not a lot of crossover between those 2 towns from like people going back and forth.
Yeah.
The scene here, from what I can tell, seems to be much bigger than it is.
I think that's
St.
accurate.
Louis.
Yeah.
We actually have a lot more people that go back and forth doing stuff like with Omaha than with St. Louis.
Oh yeah, Steve has mentioned
there's a bunch of people that do stuff back and forth from Omaha.
One in particular, though, for him, Violenteer.
Oh, yeah.
Are there people in that band?
I think the entire rest of the band, except for him, I think they're all Omaha guys.
That's what it is.
I think that's right.
Yeah.
They've been touring and stuff, doing things.
Yeah.
It's make stuff happen.
Well, I bring up Adam's name, and he was episode 33, if anybody wants to check out his amazing list of jazz records. But I bring his name up because here in the land of 120 plus episodes, I've recently been getting really excited when somebody gives me a record that hasn't appeared, or an artist who hasn't appeared. Either one is like fun and exciting. And so for your list, thank you very much, by the way, for that. Only one record has appeared on anybody's list, and it was Adam's.
Yeah.
And it's the real McCoy.
Yeah.
McCoy Tyner.
McCoy Tyner, real McCoy.
7 of 73. I'm not even sure that I counted twice, but I'm not positive that I got it right. 5 tracks, 37 minutes. McCoy on piano, Joe Henderson tenor-sax, Ron Carter on bass, Elvin Jones drums.
Yep.
5-time Grammy-winning pianist and composer out of Philadelphia, perhaps known best for his work with John Coltrane.
Yep.
What is your discovery story with this record?
I first came across that record probably. I was either in high school or maybe initially in. I guess it must have been in high school. And that the reason I put that on there, that was my introduction to Joe Henderson.
I wondered.
Yeah, and I am a giant Joe Henderson fan. But that was the very first record that I heard with Joe Henderson on it, was that one. And I came to it because I knew McCoy Tyner from John Coltrane stuff. And I saw this record, and I didn't know anything about it, but I saw that it was under his name. And I was like, man, I got to check that out. And, this was back in the days when, there was no streaming services or anything.
Of course.
I found a used CD of this and bought it. And, and it was kind of, in some ways, kind of fun in those days because there's a little bit of risk involved because you may be like, oh, what if it sucks? I bought it. But as opposed to like hopping on Spotify and
Yeah. I mean.
But immediately from the word go on, I loved the record. And I was like, I'd never heard of Joe Henderson at that point. And I started listening to the way he played tenor, and I was just like, oh, God, like this resonates with me more than just about any tenor player that I've ever heard.
And you're how old are you?
I was probably like 17 or 18.
So you're deep into your horn playing days.
Well, I mean, really, honestly, not really.
Oh, okay.
I mean, I played up to that point. I didn't really get serious about doing anything with the horn until I was 17, 18, 19.
So in there.
Yeah, right in that time period. Like I played, but like I was just, kid with a horn. I wasn't like doing it,
Yeah.
Yeah, that record, I mean, all of it is so good. Like, and the blowing on it, the soloing stuff is nuts. And right out of the gate, you get Passion Dance, which is just this like sort of open one chord jam, more or less, for the most part. It does have a bridge, but it's not anything. It's not like heavily chord driven like Giant Steps or something like that is. It's very much about having this open groove thing with Elvin just doing his thing, and then like McCoy and Joe like going nuts over the top of it, and immediately was hooked on it. And this is another one of those records that I wore out. And this one I still really like.
Whatever you paid for that used CD, you got your money's worth.
Absolutely. This one is definitely one that I will regularly still put back on.
Cool.
It's one of my favorite records of all time. That one is definitely like a, whatever you want to call it, a desert island.
Yeah, of course.
Like, and started the rabbit hole of Joe Henderson for me, which now I'm familiar with everything he's ever done. And I'm a huge fan. And really, in some ways, I mean, kind of it's hard to gauge this kind of thing, but I feel like kind of maybe underappreciated a little bit. He had the, kind of the misfortune of being roughly the same age as John Coltrane, and that like they're both in that same time period doing stuff, and of course Coltrane was the one that
bandwidth for jazz,
right, and
traditionally has been pretty small.
Yeah,
so it's like I'm moving on to the next,
right, and not that he shouldn't have or anything, but like Coltrane in the saxophone community sort of took up all the oxygen in the room for a little while, right? But, at that same time, you had like some of these guys that are real titans of the tenor, like Joe Henderson and Wayne Shorter and, others as well. But I mean, like, all those guys were roughly similar in age. Wayne obviously went on to like real professional acclaim and like, personal success starting really in the 70s, and then he just died not too long ago and was extremely active and all the way up to the very end. And Joe kind of disappeared for a little while and then had a resurgence in his career kind of in the early 90s on Blue Note with an album called Lush Life that is fantastic, and then kind of had a resurgence in the 90s with his career, some of which actually involved John Scofield. They did a record that was all Miles Davis tunes, and John was the guitarist on it.
Okay.
It was like it was really kind of, if I remember correctly, it was a trio record, so it was guitar, drums, and saxophone. It's killer. It's
nice.
So good. There may be a bass player on it, but I honestly can't recall. But anyway, point being, like, that was sort of my entry point into Joe Henderson stuff, and huge discography. Like, he did a bunch of stuff on Blue Note in the '60s that's iconic, like really iconic. That's under his name.
Cool.
Mode for Joe and all these other records that are.
I've said this a bunch of times on here before, but that is my absolute favorite. If genres are like a page in an album, the jazz page in the history album for me is Blue Note, and obviously the talent and the artists that they chose to sign and record with. But then when the project comes out, it's just 3 dudes' names and a small picture of each of them, and if it's your record, maybe you got like a slightly larger font, and that was it.
Well, those covers are like so cool.
That's what I mean.
Like, and that like sort of 60s era Blue Note stuff, that is the crux of like everybody's jazz listening if you're learning. You know what I mean? Like,
some of us will be forever learning.
Oh man, I mean, like if I had to pick a list just of those records, I don't know how long it would take. Like, I mean, because I was serious, like, is like, especially with tenor players. I mean, good God, if you want to just so Dexter Gordon, Hank Mobley, Joe Henderson, Coltrane didn't do Blue Note stuff, but Wayne Shorter, I mean, on down the list.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like, it's like every tenor player known to man was on Blue Note there for a while.
Yeah.
And just like all the stuff is killer,
Yeah.
And it changed. It sort of set that era on Blue Note really kind of set the course for jazz for the next 30 years after that.
I mean, I've literally just and going back to college is where it started for me. Still have only scratched the surface, but every time I put one of those on, it feels like the three dudes were like. They all have a rough idea of what the song, and then they just hit record and go. And everybody gets to sort of venture out and venture back in.
It very much is like that, and those records were recorded. Rudy Van Gelder was the engineer that's super famous for having done all those. And they created a specific sound, with the recordings, not just a musical style, but I mean like the actual way that if you listen to those records, there's a similar sound to them, and that's not by accident.
Okay. Okay.
Like
Interesting.
They were very definitely, there was a kind of a Blue Note sound.
Well,
they were,
fanboy out about that.
Oh
sound.
Man, yeah. Like I mean, that and I guess Capitol were probably like the two most influential, like jazz record labels. For a long time, and then Blue Note had a bit of a resurgence in the 90s.
Right.
Actually, that Joe Henderson record that I mentioned, that's on Blue Note.
The Lush Life with John Scofield.
Well, actually, Scofield's not on that one.
Oh.
But they did there was a series of those records.
Okay.
So that one, the Lush Life, which was the first of them, was the music of Billy Strayhorn. Okay. And they had a bunch of different people on it, but it was all tunes written by Billy Strayhorn.
Oh.
And then the next one was a Miles Davis one where it was, I'm pretty sure it was just Scofield and maybe Adam Nussbaum and Joe Henderson. And all the tunes were sort of iconic Miles Davis tunes. And then they did one called Double Rainbow that was a bigger band, but it was still centered around Joe Henderson. And that was all tunes of Joe Beam. So there was like sort of this series of records that they did with that. But they did, they in the 90s, they also did this whole movement of what they called like the Young Lions jazz thing.
Okay.
In the 90s, where they tried to have kind of a resurgence of what they had done in the 60s a little bit. Not the same music style, but like in sort of that cultural sense of like signing good stuff and trying to make good records.
Right.
And they had really interesting people. There was a tenor player that did 4 or 5 records on Blue Note in the 90s by the name of Rick Margetza. That's killer. I mean, he's kind of and very modern. I mean, very modern.
Okay.
But like,
is that synonymous with progressive?
Yeah,
Can be.
It could be. Sure. I mean, it's a very different break on like, so you get like tenor playing specifically kind of changed in the 80s, and it mostly changed due to Michael Brecker. And before him, there were these hard swinging, like, sort of classic sounding tenor players. And then like when Brecker kind of came on the scene, he played very differently than anyone else. And like it had a huge influence on just tenor playing itself, beyond that point. And actually, this is going to get convoluted, but interesting tie-in. Part of where Brecker's thing came from, part of it was a reaction to having heard Jan Garbarek, who is the tenor player on that Keith Jarrett album that I gave you.
Oh.
Okay. So Jan is a very polarizing figure in tenor playing. But like part of what Brecker was doing was a bit of a reaction to having heard Garbarek, who was extremely different than what tenor players were doing at that time.
Wow.
Like, you got to remember, like, that record that I sent you, I think it's 1971, I think, is when New Dance came out.
80.
80. Okay, so it was later than that. But even earlier than 80, that quartet was doing things like that.
Let's just move to it. 35 of 84 for him.
35 of, what do you mean?
Records.
Oh, yeah.
84.
For Keith Jarrett?
Yeah.
Yeah.
6 tracks, 101 minutes.
Crazy prolific. It's a double album.
Well, but when I first pulled it up, I immediately went to running time of the tracks.
Yeah.
And I was like, holy shit, what are we doing here? But another pivot to the Brooke Kafka. She plays horns around... horns. She plays saxophone. She was just on and had a Michael Brecker record on her list. I'd never heard of him before. So all this is brand new.
Well, to expand on that, you may not have heard of him, but you had heard him God knows how many times. And I'll tell you why.
Okay.
Because Brecker was probably the single most prolific studio saxophonist that has ever been.
So that's who you call when you need to make
a
record?
Like everybody from Joni Mitchell to Paul Simon to a bunch of iconic records that you've heard that had saxophone on them and you didn't know who it was Michael Brecker.
Wow.
He played even up to and including Parliament. Like he played with P-Funk for a while.
He's got a bunch of his own records.
He also has a bunch of his own records.
Okay.
But literally, if you were to go through his discography of things that he was a sideman on, literally probably thousands of records.
Wow.
It's crazy.
Thousands.
It's probably, that's
even if it's hundreds,
that's hyperbole to a degree, but the list is literally unbelievable.
Wow.
It's just like, it's insane. And so that's part of the reason why that became so pervasive, right? Because he was on everything. And he was real famous on the New York sort of art music scene. He has a brother too, Randy, who's a trumpet player.
Okay.
And they had a band together in the 70s that was super influential called the Brecker Brothers. That really was kind of the real icon of fusion in the like late 70s.
Interesting.
And with some other guys like Mike Stern, the guitar player, was in that band. Mike's became a very famous guy on his own after that. But anyway, because of all those things, they literally they played with, they played with everybody. Like I'm not kidding when I say there's a Parliament record that they're on.
Wow.
And
the way that Michael is playing is a reaction to
some degree is I don't want to like claim that I know that for a fact.
No.
It's a pretty
it feels like
you can definitely hear the influence there.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
Because like Garbarek's got this incredibly unique sound that is instantly recognizable for one thing, and just an incredible break from what literally only a couple of years before was the norm of the tenor.
Huh,
okay.
A couple of years.
Really,
wow.
You figured 1980 was like when this record came out, but they were making records in the mid 70s. And so you figure 5 years before that, like 1969, and you think about like what was going on then, with Coltrane, Wayne Shorter, Joe Henderson, those kind of people. And there was a very specific sort of tenor sound, right? That was pretty common. All those guys are different, don't get me wrong, but the overall ethos kind of the tone qualities and stuff was relatively similar.
Sure.
And then out of nowhere, you've listened to that record, I'm guessing. It's
and let me back up by saying, so I see your list, right?
Yeah.
However much of that I retain until it's time to sit down and prep.
Right.
But I remember seeing it and being like, wow, he's got a country record on here too. This Keith Jarrett character sounds like a country artist.
Oh, yeah.
I'd never heard of him.
It's definitely
so,
not.
Yeah. So when I open it up and see the track lengths, I'm like, wait a minute.
Yeah.
What are we doing here? And then woo!
Well, and like right out of the gate, my favorite one on that is Chant of the Soil, which is the very first one. And, it takes it, like 6 minutes to get rolling. And then it's just like Garbarek, like screaming into the void for like 10 minutes, and it's I mean, yeah, I mean it's it's so different than what had been going on, not long before that.
And he wound up this record wound up in your hands because did we already cover that?
This one's kind of a funny story. That was actually the first record with Garbarek on it that I'd heard, and I'm a huge Garbarek fan. And there's another saxophone player here in town. I don't know if you know Todd Wilkinson. Played. He's been around here forever.
Okay.
But, and he was teaching when I was at KU. He was like doing his doctorate, and he's probably 20-ish years older than me, something like that. Anyway, and I was just like sitting around shooting the breeze with him, and I was looking for something new to listen to. I was like, man, I haven't heard anything, blah, blah, blah. He's like, you should check out, and that was the very first thing. He's like, you should check out New Dance. I'm like, who's on it? And he told me, I was like, I don't know any of those guys. He's like, well, by God, you ought to. And so
I would have left that conversation thinking that he said NEWDANCE.
Right. Yeah.
But it's
Nude.
Yeah.
That's what it's like. Yeah. And I got it, and the first time that I heard that first track, I was just like, who the fuck is this? Like, I heard that tenor sound is unreal, and so then after that, I really went down the Garbarek rabbit hole.
Fun.
And like,
and
man, it's that stuff is, I say it's polarizing because generally people either love it or they absolutely hate it. And there's very little middle ground.
I didn't really, this isn't a thing where I was like, oh, I hate this at any point. I enjoyed it. I wasn't like, oh my God. But also, hate was never.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if you listen to some of his solo records, they're pretty dark. And it's like, he's got a very, very aggressive tone. Like, it's real in your face.
Okay.
And so, like, he tends to be a little bit of a polarizing figure in the saxophone community just because of the sound. But I mean, I love it. I think it's great. And I think a lot of people do.
And when he made this recommendation to you and you got it, again, this is pre-streaming. So when you go, who the fuck is that? You can immediately go to your liner notes.
Yeah, you couldn't do that, right? And I found a copy of it.
Yeah.
And it took a while. I didn't find it immediately.
Oh, okay.
But I got it. And then again, like, that was the start of like really going down the rabbit hole of everything Garbarek ever did. And definitely changed the way I played. I was very much more of a sort of traditional tenor player before I heard that. And that started to change. Like, you start to see like what's possible, and you're just like, oh, okay,
right.
Like,
I didn't know I could do that.
Yeah. You hear somebody do some of the, like I was fascinated by that first tune. That's on. I was just, I'd never heard anything like that, and they go off the deep end so far on it that it's just like, you get 15 minutes into it, and you're still just like, this is still cool.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
Which, sometimes things like that are just long and not interesting.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But on that, I mean, shit, anybody can sit down and listen to that, and, you may get 15 minutes into it and you're still like, yeah, this is still cool.
Yeah.
Like, they're still doing stuff,
Nice. Well, we go, so 67 with McCoy Tyner out of Philly, Keith Jarrett in 1980 out of Allentown. Mm-hmm. And then we leap all the way to North Carolina in 1992. I was so excited when I saw this on your list. Maceo Parker.
Oh, that, yeah.
Life on Planet Groove.
I forgot to put that on there, yeah. Oh, God,
7th
that record.
of 18 for him, 8 tracks, 74 minutes. I mean, James Brown, Parliament Funkadelic, and Prince, who has a better resume? Oh, yeah. And I've seen right around, a few years after this came out, I saw him when I was in college and out in Colorado. And
the live shows are insane.
I didn't know you could do that.
Oh, yeah.
I was like, I feel like the roof is going to come off the place, and most folks in here I don't think came to this show because they were like diehard fans. I think it was well publicized, and you can't miss. It's going to be amazing.
Yeah.
And it was. And I love all of the nobody shouts out.
Oh, yeah.
His fellow Miss Candidolpha,
all
of the folks.
Like well, and not only that, but like there's all of the stuff that that he kind of clearly took from the James Brown experience.
Right.
Like they're constantly messing with the crowd. You know, like back and forth with getting people to yell stuff or do stuff or whatever, and like
go Larry,
Larry, like constantly interacting with the crowd, and like, and yeah, I'm kind of like you. Like I've seen him a couple of times, and probably like the best live show I've ever seen.
So fun.
It's not, and I mean, like they pretty much light the candle, and then it's going to be like 2 hours of like they never stop playing. Like, they get it for that that whole time. And I mean, when
everybody is sweating.
Oh my God! And the first time I ever saw him, like this probably would have been like 2000-ish or whatever. I mean, hell, he was an old man at that point.
Yeah.
And still doing. I mean, I guess he wasn't that old. He's probably like 55. I think he's about 80 now.
Yeah, I think you're right.
And but he's still doing it. They're still out there with that, touring those things. And again, very different, like whole different take on playing the horn. Like, it's all like groove based. It's all it's party music. The whole thing is, and it's incredible. And that's kind of one of the interesting things when you start talking about saxophone players is like the horn is so flexible that like you can do almost anything with it, and it's interesting to see where people land with that, right? There's obviously the hardcore jazz community and all that, but there's also a bunch of stuff like this that's killer, and I mean Maceo's great, and the bands are insanely good, and again, I think the first track on that one's like 12 minutes long, but you don't notice it,
and then it just rolls right into Past the Peas.
Yep, right into the next one.
Man.
With him and Fred Wesley and Pee Wee Ellis, that was like the original James Brown horn section.
I remember making that realization and being like, how is everybody getting paid an amount that they feel comfortable with? There's James Brown horn players, and there's 400 of us at $20 a pop. Like,
yeah, you do it 7 nights a week, 300 days a year, which is what those guys did. So but they also spent a huge amount of time, especially on that tour when they were doing it. They spent a bunch of time in Europe.
Okay,
because it was like he was at the time was. Probably still is, like hugely popular in Europe.
Really?
Yeah, and they that's where most of this was recorded in Germany.
Oh, I saw that, and I didn't know that. That's crazy.
And like it's. I mean, so he spent a lot of time touring abroad with it, but yeah, I mean, they bust their butts. And they're out there like that's man. Those old school dudes, like that's how they did it, man. It's like you work your butt off. They get the van and hit it.
That's crazy.
And yeah, it's that one's a lot of fun.
Yeah, it is.
And there's some really cool stuff on it.
There is.
It's kind of maybe a bit of a what's the right word? Cliche tune, but that version of Georgia on My Mind.
I was wondering if you're going to go to that song.
It's great.
It is great.
It's like. And normally if I would see that, I'm like, I only want to hear one person do that. It is amazing,
right.
But then you hear it, and you're like, okay, no, it's actually super good.
Two people.
Yeah. Two people. Yeah. And the flute solo that's on that, is super good too. Although I'm pretty sure the flute solo on that's probably Pee Wee Ellis. I don't think it's Maceo.
No, I think you're right.
But there's so much iconic stuff. Like those tunes, Past the Peas is like a, good God, they've been doing that since like 1966.
Yeah.
With the JBs.
Yeah.
Like way back.
Probably the JBs.
Yeah, I mean, and out of all that, obviously, came, things like Bootsy Collins moving over to play with Parliament, and then all that stuff, and this whole genre of stuff that was like almost grew out of side projects.
Bubbles up out of the bog.
Like I mean it's and you end up with things like the Parliament Project and Bootsy's Rubber Band and like which all these guys played with too,
Yeah.
And and just killer stuff.
Yeah.
And then for Maceo too, obviously going on and playing with Prince was a big one.
Yeah.
Have you ever seen that live at the Aladdin?
I didn't even realize that he had played with Prince until I sat down to get.
So. Yeah. There's a concert video that's live at the Aladdin with Prince from I don't know, probably like the late 90s, I guess. And he and Fred Wesley are both on it. As it's those two plus Eric Leeds, that's the tenor player that plays with Prince normally. It's just a killer live show.
Nice.
But like, yeah, he played off and on with Prince for quite a while. And yeah, that must have been a good gig.
Yeah.
But I mean, come on. But
well, moving from 92 to 2016, the David Bowie discography is something that I know so little, and there's a lot of it.
There's so
not
much.
Numbers like McCoy, Tyner, and Keith Jarrett, but 27, upwards of 30 Bowie records.
There's a bunch, man.
So when I see Blackstar, 7 tracks, 41 minutes, I say to myself, I'm unfamiliar. Mm-hmm. And then I get in there and I'm like, oh shit, this is his last fucking record?
Yep.
And he's gone 2 days after the release of it.
Yep.
And I know that I read a couple more tidbits about it, but it seemed as though there was an awareness of on his part to like.
That's what I've read.
Right.
I don't know, who knows, but I've read that he was the only one that really knew, like was aware of the situation, I think. But I don't really know. But I mean, that's what I've been led to believe from what I've read as well. So I guess when you view that record through that lens, presumably he knew it was going to be the last one,
Right.
And you start listening to the tunes through that lens as well, and it changes them for you.
Told you I'm still processing.
Yeah.
And, I don't want to single out the lead off track, but it was very captivating. Mm-hmm. And then the stuff that follows is kind of a departure from the feel of that track.
A little bit.
But I really enjoyed it. And
yeah.
It was such a treat, and I'm so thankful that you put it on your list.
Dude, it is a unique album in a number of ways, in my opinion. And there's some just killer like the Blackstar thing, the very first track. That thing is a real. I'm not even sure how to describe that. I mean, it's almost like two tunes in one. You get that middle section.
Yeah.
That's like, it's almost like having a completely separate tune inside the tune, and then they come back around and get out.
Yeah.
Of it. And it's it's dark as fuck. Like, speaking of that, I'm assuming we're not worried about language.
Correct.
Oh, okay.
Correct.
I wasn't sure about that, but it's it's real dark, but also kind of weirdly uplifting.
I know.
but as you're listening to it, like the lyrics in particular, you're like, it shouldn't be, but it sort of is. The one that really strikes me, and probably I think a lot of people talk about this, knowing after the fact that he was going to die like real soon afterwards, is Lazarus. I mean, that's the one that's like, but all of it's interesting. And the tunes they go from being like that, the real kind of dark, heavy things, to some of them are kind of light, like real poppy kind of, I don't know. It's an interesting one, man.
I found myself early and often realizing that I was upset that I going to hit play, and I'm like, okay, so I'm going to have an opinion about this record.
Yeah.
What is it going to be?
Right.
And I hit play, and it's like, why are you doing that?
Yeah.
Like, how come you can't just be blank and let it?
Just let it be what it's going to be.
And I'm not sure I've ever had that experience before. It was very profound.
It's, I think sometimes when you run across a record like that, it's real, like, it's pretty raw. Like the record, I mean, like I feel like the kind of the concepts, musical concepts and lyrical concepts in it are real heavy, and kind of difficult to get through, but not in a bad way, but like, it's not one you're gonna like put on and then go like, wash the dishes or whatever. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like it, it's not like a B-52s record or something. Where
I'm not gonna put those on at all.
Yeah,
so.
And I mean, it's like I mean, musically, it's fascinating because there's a lot going on, like around what he's doing, right? And there's a ton of small things that if you listen, like really listen intensely to what's going on, like the number of details that are in there is kind of staggering, and the playing is just killer.
Yeah,
like I mean, Donnie's playing his ass off across the whole record. That one tune, what is it? 'Tis a Pity She Was a Whore.
Yeah, where
I mean, like he's just freaking the fuck out on tenor, like all the way across that thing. Like, and it's fantastic playing, and the whole sort of underpinnings of Sue with between the drums and bass, the thing that's going on through that whole thing is just killer, and then you get this weird ass, like, I don't even know if I like this tune. I'll just say that up front, that Girl Loves Me tune that's on there. Like,
what track number is that?
Track 5.
Okay.
It's the one that's almost like a down tempo, like EDM almost, like, that's the wrong description, but like,
that's okay.
It's a very weird, like, I can't figure out exactly what it is, which is not, for me, that's not a bad thing. I love that. Like, I'm usually way into it. If I'm like, I cannot tell what in the hell this is, I'm usually like on board. That one though, like, I can't even tell if I like it.
Right.
Honestly.
Right.
Yeah, I listen to it. I'm just kind of like, there's nothing happening here. But then you're like, but there is actually a lot happening here. But I don't know if it's anything that I really want to hear.
But I'm like, still glad.
Yeah, but I'm still like, that's a weird, like, it's weird when you run across a record that can have like real dichotomy like that, where like there's some stuff on it that immediately you hear it and you're like, okay, that's badass. Like, yeah. I love that. And then right behind it, there might be something where you're like, I don't know if I like that at all. Like, that's interesting to me,
Yeah.
Because it's the same.
You guys goofed up and put this track on the wrong record.
It's like, how did this happen?
Yeah.
But I mean, but I think sometimes the records that have those things on them, I mean, end up, the good things on them end up being some of the best stuff. And I think part of that is because, like, if I think anyway, when you hear those kinds of records, that means that they were really taking some swings. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, they were trying some shit.
Yeah.
And some of it worked and some of it didn't. And that's the nature of the beast.
But at the end of the day, we're thankful that you took the swings.
Exactly. And it's like that willingness to be like, to give it a whirl and knowing that it might not work.
Yeah.
But being willing to try
it.
I think that's incredibly important.
For sure.
Right? Like, if you're going to be a musician, like, of any, kind of quality, you just cannot afford to be worried about making mistakes.
Yeah.
You absolutely cannot. Like, it's incredibly important to only sort of be beholden to yourself in terms of those kinds of things. I've told people before, and I mean it, but it sounds funny to say it, but like, I don't give a fuck what anybody thinks about what comes out of the end of the horn at all. If you like it, thank you. I'm 100% on board. I appreciate it. but I'm not concerned about it. If that makes sense. Like, it's if you don't like it, that's fine too. Don't care.
Yeah.
But it's like I literally I don't care. It's the only thing that concerns me is whether I did what I thought I was trying to do and whether I'm okay with it.
You're an artist.
Exactly. And part of that is knowing that not everybody's going to like everything you do. I mean, that's just part of it. And that's true whether you're talking about music or visual arts or anything else.
But
I mean, like,
most folks are, because you're still busy.
Oh, sure.
You know?
Yeah. But, and again, it's not that I don't appreciate it when people do like it. It's not like that. It's just that, I'm not concerned with that, if that makes sense. And I think some people take that the wrong way and think that it's like some sort of arrogant, like it's not at all. And probably I shouldn't put it as I don't give a fuck what you think about. Although I don't give a fuck what you know what I mean.
Similarly, most of the time that I open the front door for one of these, most of the time it's a person I've never met before.
Right.
I'm nervous.
Sure.
Because I don't want this to suck.
Sure.
I want you to enjoy it. I want the listener to enjoy it. I want to enjoy it.
Mm-hmm.
And the minute that I stop caring about, can I make this better? What tweaks can I make? The minute that goes away, the quality goes. So if you're not focused with what comes out of the horn for Rich Wheeler,
right?
I think you could make the same argument. Like your performance, your horn playing, your skill set, all of it doesn't maintain the shine.
I think that's probably there's something to that. I mean, so there's the weird side of that too. Like I have to care what I do, right? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I guess the point is more just like that is the only, at the end of the day, that's the opinion that matters, right? And like I'm just not concerned with what other people may or may not think about it.
Right.
Now, the end result of that is I think that you produce a product that people do like.
Right.
But you absolutely, in my opinion, you cannot allow yourself to be driven by that.
No.
And if you do, it's not going to be interesting. It's also not going to really be you because you're letting it get pushed by outside influences. And I think if the instant you do that, you're no longer doing what it is that you do, right?
Yeah.
Now, are there situations where you have to tailor what you do to the situation to some degree? Yeah, there are, of course. That's different.
I.e. the band that fell to earth.
Exactly.
On whatever level.
But even that is different in that, like, the only standard that still matters is my own standard there because, like, I'm going to do it to the nth degree, right? And sure. I know that I'm and I have to be the one that executes it. The other thing that gets weird about that, particularly when you're someone who does a lot of improvising, is also then kind of making the intellectual leap there too of understanding that, let's say I blow a solo on a tune on some gig, right? The only person who actually knows what that was supposed to sound like is me. Because you can't hear the idea that's in my head.
I know.
All you can hear is, right? So
we're our own worst critics.
Right.
Don't draw attention to your mistakes because the crowd probably
doesn't. They don't know. But I mean, the point there being like, you have to be the only one sort of comparing notes because you're the only one that knows what that was supposed to be, right?
Yeah.
And so it's tricky, in that regard. I try to be okay with whatever I do. And to that end, I do a lot of sort of freelance recording, like things for Dan Jones, for instance. And what I almost invariably do on that is I'll take like whatever section they want. I'll take like 5 passes on it and then just tell them to use whatever they liked because I'm okay with all of it. You know what I mean?
I love that. That's great.
And this is Dan Jones's record,
right? It gives it back to him to be like, cool,
because it's like because he's got his side of it too, right?
Yeah,
where he knows what he wants it to sound like, and I don't really have. as long as whatever I give him as material, I think is good material, then I think I kind of got to let him make the decision on what he thinks is going to fit his thoughts on the record the best.
Yeah.
Right? Because he's the one that knows what that's supposed to sound like.
And also,
right?
if you're the artist putting out a record, like I would imagine that your plate is full.
Yeah.
And if you, as a contributing artist, can take a piece off of it, he's going to be like, obviously he knows you got chops because he called you in the first place. If that's your approach, hey, next time I'm calling Rich.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Because you take a thing off of his plate and he can focus on.
Well, you just try to give him good material, right? Like you give them good material that then they can make their own decisions with, right? Yeah. Now, the only time that I probably would not, well, and I would even in this case, but it would be a slightly different thing. Like on a jazz record, I would probably take like 4 or 5 passes on something, and then be like, okay, but whatever you do, whichever one you pick is fine, but make sure you use a contiguous solo. You know what I mean? Don't cut and paste. Because in that situation, those are sort of long arc ideas where the whole thought process needs to be there, right?
Well, Gherkin said for recording one of the Shiner records that he, went and did the thing and then listening, he's like, you guys pasted some rolls, and like I would never do that.
Right.
And I don't know that he was necessarily upset, but it was a concept that had never occurred to me before that could happen.
Yeah, and it tends to happen more in like that's what I'm saying. If it was like a pure jazz record where the whole thought process of the solo was to have the concept line of the solo, right? I mean, when jazz guys talk a lot about architecture, and what they're talking about it's exactly what you would think it is. The architecture of a solo is like the building blocks of the things that you're always like setting something up for, down the road, and the thought process is always kind of backfilling and building the whole time, right? And with a jazz solo, if you try and cut that up, you lose the through line of the continuity of the thought process, and it fucks it up.
Yeah.
And like you'll hear it after the fact, you're like, it just sounds disjointed and doesn't sound right. In a smaller solo setting, like on a record where maybe they got like a 8 or 16 bar thing where they want a horn solo, it's actually much easier to have smaller ideas that could be cut and pasted, right? Because you're building them in a different way.
Yeah.
Like conceptually, you're building them in a different way. And so, like cutting some stuff up in that situation, that's not a big deal. You're generally playing sort of short phrase stuff anyway, and it's fine.
Yeah.
Which is why I say the only time I would really have a problem with that would be, if you in a jazz setting doing something like that. The other thing with that, typically, if you're recording a jazz record, usually you don't do multi-tracked things like the rhythm section doesn't play and then you go play a solo. Like it's usually everybody playing together
live.
And the problem with that, I mean, the reason you can't really cut and paste that is there's so much reactivity to like like you do something, then the drummer hears it and does something, the piano player hears that and does something, and like that organic nature of that gets lost. If you start punching in a solo over something that's already done, you don't get the interaction. Right. And so much of that is an interactive thing that you kind of lose the life off of it if you do that.
Yeah.
But recording in general with those kinds of things, it's difficult enough, but it's, I like recording a lot. I prefer live recordings. The Brandon Draper Quintet record that I was telling about earlier, that was a live record.
Yeah.
And I kind of prefer that because it's what the group actually sounds like. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, it's easy to go. I mean, well, not easy, but relatively easy to go into the studio and do something absolutely cleanly because you can fix everything. But, live, you don't get that option. Yeah. Like, it is what it is.
Yep.
It's what, and that's, I mean, I think also as someone who's just done a ton of live playing, it's like that's what feels real to me. You know, that's why there are certain records by certain bands that I can't listen to them because they're so clean and it just sounds fake. Like I hear it and I'm like, that is not real. Like, that drives me nuts.
Yeah.
Like, I don't want to hear that.
Yeah.
It's like, what's the point? It's like, there's no, you've cleaned it up to the point it's so antiseptic that there's like,
I'm going to throw in a caveat just because it's fresh. Huge fish head. They just, what's today? Saturday, Wednesday night, just silently put a new single out.
Yeah.
For a record that's coming out in July.
Yeah.
And, they've had their own studio and whatever. The producer X come up to our play. So they've got a string section on this tune. And the harmonies, the vocal harmonies amongst the band members are just, I mean, they care about what the studio record, track by track is going to. This is etched in time. This is the thing. Yeah. Now, they do that tune and will do that tune live.
Right.
And they play a bunch of live gigs. They're never going to tour with the string section.
Right.
They're never going to, their harmonies are never going to sound like that, but they don't care.
Right.
They're doing a different thing over here on the road, but
it's a different project.
I like that we're happy with this tune the way it is. Check.
Yeah.
So it doesn't always work that way, but there are times where I think you can go, that's not real, but it is through this lens.
Yeah. Well, there's also like from a realistic standpoint, there's certain kinds of projects like that where realistically the only way it's going to happen is in the studio.
Right.
Right. I mean, like, and that just kind of is what it is. But it's like, when you polish out like every single, warble of like what the fuck are we doing?
Right.
Like,
yeah.
Like you hear modern pop records where everything's been auto-tuned to the point where there isn't a single wave anywhere in the whole damn thing. And, you're hearing, a lot of times drums that were clearly done by a drum machine, not by a live player. And you're like, what the fuck are we doing here? Like,
you said this was music.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm kidding.
Well, I mean, it's like, what? I mean, what's the point of this, right?
Yeah.
It's like, what? I mean, literally, what the fuck are we doing here? Like, I don't, and I think there's this. I'm sure marketing driven, idea of pop records, particularly being, sort of like spit and polish to the point where there's no life left in them, man. And you hear them, you're just like, this sucks. It's like, but clearly that isn't what most people think,
right?
Because they sell the shit out of it.
Yeah.
But but I mean, like from a musician standpoint,
third pressing of this record.
Yeah,
oh my god.
You're like, I mean,
okay.
Yeah, and you hear it, and you're just like, okay. I mean, I mean, it's. Some of that is a get off my lawn moment, but I mean, it's like,
we're 1974 babies. We're
I mean, it's just like, I mean, what the fuck are we doing?
Yeah.
Like, are we playing music or are we like just making a product here?
Yeah.
And like, and not, obviously not everyone is guilty of that. But I mean, you mentioned Tom Waits earlier. Listen to those records. They're great. But they're not overproduced to the point of oblivion,
No, he's got a line in there somewhere where he talks about that very thing, and he says, "I'd rather take a 2x4 and hit the bottom side of a sink in an old garage. Keep me as far away from that shit as possible."
Yeah, I mean, and obviously, different strokes for different folks and that kind of thing. But I mean, like, I don't understand the modern version of what we're doing with those kinds with pop music in general in terms of producing it in that fashion. It's like,
It'll be an interesting thing to look back on one day.
Yeah, like
how about that?
30 years from
now.
Yeah. Look back and like, what the hell were people thinking of that shit? You know, I mean, it's but you know, I mean, part of that too is like this actually permeates a lot of different things, but like the tools have gotten way better, right? And resisting the urge to use the tools just because you can is where most people fall down, right? Like, just because you can do something doesn't make it a good idea.
Yeah,
right?
There's a pile of heroin right here on the table. It's there if you want it.
And yeah, can you absolutely tune things to the, in the studio to the point where there's not a warble of any kind or anything anywhere in it? Yeah, you absolutely can. But does that make it a good idea? I'm not so sure of that.
Led Zeppelin would say no.
Yeah. I mean, and so that's, I think, part of it too is like intelligently making decisions on when to use, certain tools to do, or editing certain things, or like, but how earlier also we were talking about like being, having to be sort of like your own judge and jury on what you're comfortable with. Well, be comfortable with it. Stop fixing all that shit.
Yeah.
I mean,
no kidding.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, something didn't come out 100% the way you wanted it. Well, either do it again or just accept it.
Yeah.
And I think acceptance is the part that nobody will, that's like the mirror nobody wants to face. Is that's what you did. That's how it came out. Be okay with it. Or if it's so bad that you just can't stand it, do it again.
Yeah.
But like, I think people are unwilling to have like any hint of an imperfection or like, but
hope you're not taking that act on the road then.
Yeah.
Because you're not going
to have that. I mean, like the reality of music is not that.
Right.
And now when professional musicians make mistakes, are they much smaller and harder to find than they are for other people? Yeah. But that doesn't mean they're not there.
Right.
And you have to be willing to accept the fact that there are going to be things, and that's part of it.
Yeah.
And, if you're not willing to accept that, I'm gonna throw this phrase out again. What the fuck are we doing?
Yeah.
Yeah, that is the hardest part probably, right? But if you're not willing to do that part of it, then why are you here anyway?
Dream job.
Yeah.
Novelist, writer.
Sure.
Writing is easy. It's not.
Editing?
Correct. Because
you go back and read it like, I don't know about that.
Yeah. I got to get my daughter to a birthday party, but I do really, really appreciate you being here. And
Absolutely.
I like to hammer out some goofy questions before we wrap.
Sure.
So if we can pretend or imagine that we all have a personal and a professional bucket list. Let's say you're given all the resources to hammer out number one on both of those lists. What would they be?
So a personal one and a professional one?
Yeah, and sometimes they're one and the same, I guess.
Well, I guess they probably would end up being one and the same, because I think if I had unlimited resources, what I would do is sort of solidify my living situation in a way that I was able to maybe like do some playing and recording at home with whoever I wanted to.
Anxiety and worry free.
Yeah, and not have to be as worried about just surviving.
Sure.
Because in the profession, particularly the professional music business, like it's always a near run thing. We don't have a 401k.
Right.
Like that ain't happening.
Luxurious benefit options.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think that would probably be where I would go, and I think it would be kind of one and the same.
Cool. I like that. Lunch with anyone you're choosing, dead or alive. Ooh. Who's it going to be and why?
Oh, God. Man, that's a tough one. This is an interesting one, but it's partially because of a side interest, but maybe Albert Einstein.
Oh.
And I'm hugely interested in physics and like like large concept physics.
Okay.
Black holes, that kind of thing.
Oh.
And I think that would probably be really interesting to me to have lunch. Actually, any of those guys like that, like him or Hawking or, Oppenheimer.
Cool.
Somebody along those lines, because I would like to pick their brain about some of that.
Nice. I love it. You're given the ability to visit your past self at any age you're choosing. What age are you choosing, and what are you saying?
Early 20s, and I'm saying fat, drunk, and stupid is no way to go through life.
Is that Stripes?
Yeah. I'd say no, it's Animal House.
Animal House, God damn it.
Yeah,
yes. I love it.
Yeah. Wasted a lot of time in my case.
You recall that at one point there was a television program called Fear Factor?
Yeah.
That Joe Rogan hosted. Mm-hmm. And it was, I never watched it, but conceptually, like, you're giving people the willies times 1,000.
Yeah.
What is the absolute worst Fear Factor scenario for Rich Wheeler?
God. Snakes. Oh, God, I fucking hate snakes.
Indiana. Why did it have to be snakes?
Yes, dude, like... I don't even know why exactly, other than where I grew up. I mean, I grew up kind of out in the country, and like they were everywhere.
Yeah,
and then you always find them when you least expected it.
Yeah,
and it's like, yeah, I fucking hate snakes.
Yeah,
that would
same.
Probably be what it would be.
Please complete this for me. The world would immediately become a better place in which to live, if only.
Universal basic income.
Whoa, I love it. I don't know how we get there, but
I don't either.
I'm
but
on board.
I mean, we're headed there, and I'll tell you a quick aside. But we better start planning on it, because with AI, everybody's going to be unemployed.
Fuck, that's terrifying.
Yeah, there are huge swaths of the job market that are going to disappear because they're better done by AI. And if we don't start figuring out how to deal with that, in reality, the only way to deal with it's going to be UBI, because there are literally not going to be enough jobs for everyone. I don't see any way around that. And I'm not like, super, I don't even know what the right word would be. Like, I'm not like politically super active or anything like that, but it's like, it doesn't take a genius to look at the situation and what the uses of AI are going to lead to start to understand that huge swaths of the job market are just going to disappear.
That's immediately where I went in my mind when you said that. Yeah. Is like election year. What are they? We created 700,000 new jobs.
Yeah,
it's
they're all going to go away.
Yeah.
Think about all of the things that employ huge numbers of people right now that when it's applied, data entry? Nope.
Sorry, it's not funny, but shit.
Yeah, but gone.
Yeah.
Gone. So that takes entire industries like medical coding, just like there's the knock-on effects of something like that are things that people don't think about.
Right.
And we're going to be screwed if we don't start thinking about it, because it's going to happen really fucking fast. And then we're going to have huge numbers of people with no jobs.
Yeah.
So anyway, that would be my answer to that.
That's fantastic. Okay. Brandon Prosper Quintet.
Brandon Draper.
Sorry, it's I need to do that, and I didn't do it. Brandon Draper Quintet live at Jardines can be found out there.
Yep.
Rich Wheeler's playing horns on it. If Men of Men are doing stuff, you're in the mix.
Yep. January 27th, or January? Where the hell did that come from? April 27th.
April 27th, okay.
At the show.
And other than that, you usually post on your Facebook page?
I do. I try and stay on top of that. I don't have a personal website because I'm far too lazy to keep something like that up. But yeah, there's a lot of stuff coming up.
Cool.
So.
Really appreciate you being here and sharing part of your Saturday with me. And
absolutely. Thank you.
Hope to talk to you soon.
Yep. Sounds great. Thanks.